All right, good evening, everyone. Jose J. Garcia, real estate investor, coach, and mentor. So we have another Sunday coaching series. Quite a few people joining us on Instagram. So good evening. Um, Tonight's topic is going to be on evictions. We got about 4 topics we want to cover. So we're going to try to cover every one of those as much as we can. Sundays is a 30-minute coaching call, so only so much we can cover on that. Do not forget they come Wednesday evenings, however, at 7 p.m. EST time. We hold the much longer, the much more deep dive kind of thing we go into, and we really break down specifics a lot more. When you're thinking about something like evictions, you're back to the legality side of it. One of the biggest differences between mobile homes, which is personal property, and real property, being real estate, is the legality side, the documents, the due diligence, the paperwork, all that goes hand in hand with the closing. But when it comes to the actual evictions, the processes are very similar when it comes to being a renter. Now, we'll talk a little bit about if you're doing a rent to own, you're creating a note, you're financing, you're playing the bank per se, because at that point you are selling with interest or however it is that you got the notes. Bear with me 1 second here. Okay. So my Zoom is, there we go. Okay, I hope everybody saw me there. But when you are financing a mobile home to anybody, you are playing the bank. So it really depends on how it is that you're writing it up. And before I go any further, I am not an attorney. I cannot give any of you legal advice. All my information on here is for educational purposes only. So I do ask that if you are running into one of these eviction issues or some of the stuff we're covering, just make sure that you consult with your attorney first of all. Okay. Oh, we might have to get started on Zoom as well. Wonderful. Okay. So let's see. 1 second. All right, let's just keep on rolling. So good evening, everyone on Instagram joining us. Good evening. If you're new to this call, it's every Sunday, 8 p.m. But let's jump right on in. Okay, we're going to start with evictions, the typical regular evictions. I am renting a mobile home to a tenant, of course, or tenants if you have multiple at this time. And let's see, we go. And they're not paying. That's the typical. And I mean, it's typically rent is due on the 1st. It is late after the 5th. Eviction happens the 15th. That's the very common thing that we see with mobile home parks and also with investors. It's not a bad set of dates to set. It doesn't really matter which dates you set. Some landlords like to say payment on the 15th. By the 20th you're late kind of thing. And then of course, same thing, just different times throughout the month. So it doesn't really matter. But you always have that one grace period, and it's always between 5 to 7 days. What we see, we follow the concept of the mobile home parks, because that's when we pay the lot. Don't forget that if your mobile home is inside of a community, then you have lot rent due every month. So what we like to do is obviously collect the lump sum, which is typically how we write our agreements. Is example, lot rent is $300 and rental rate is $700. So we'll be up to that market of $700 a month, but $300 out of that $700 covers the lot rent. So you're really only netting $400 per se. And in that example, different markets, different numbers. Of course, they're all over the place. Just depends on that. But after the 5th is typically when we say, well, if you don't pay by the 5th, there's a late fee post effect, and it's typically a percentage. With us, it's typically a 10%. We don't go any higher than that. It's typically 10% of the total. Example, if it's $700 a month, like this example, then on the 6th, you would owe $70. Okay. Now, here's where I'm going to start going into a little bit of gray area, depending on the states, the counties, the cities, wherever you're at. And again, please consult with your cities, please consult with your attorneys to make sure that everything is up to par and you're doing everything legal. You don't want to get yourself in trouble trying to conduct a certain way that one city allows it, but another one does not. That can get you in trouble. But what I'm seeing a lot of landlords do as well, and I don't blame them in a sense, is if the rent is due on the 1st, late after the 5th, and evictions on the 15th, what they're really saying there is, okay, pay as long as you pay before the 15th or on the 15th, we won't start filing eviction. So you don't really get evicted. That's just the date that it starts. Meaning, okay, 16 came around and you have not paid. At that point, now we can start filing the eviction. You see, that's when the actual process actually starts. So then from there, and we'll get into that in a minute, get into the court systems and all the process, that's when it takes action. It does not happen that quickly, unfortunately. But the one thing I'll say immediately is work with your tenants as much as you can. If you can avoid court at all costs per se, do so. I don't like to evict anyone unless I
I have a
absolutely.
question.
Yes, Mason.
Am I able to still buy a property if I've like been to jail? Because I'm currently on house arrest also.
Okay. Well, why don't you wait till the end just a little bit, and then I'll answer
Okay.
that. All right. All right. So work with the tenants as much as you can. And I mean, don't go so far that you let them backtrack so much. That's the thing is, if the tenant keeps paying a lot of rent, late payments every month, and that's common. Today is the fourth, tomorrow is the fifth. I know it's a holiday, so that's when you see people even get a little bit more behind. But come the sixth, the first thing we do in office is check who has not paid at this time. Tends to be the same tenants every time, and that's fine. You kind of expect that in a sense, but it's immediately reaching out to them, following up, and don't let not on that. We tend to send reminders from time to time. That's not really necessary unless you absolutely have to. If it is a new tenant, then we do want to send a letter. You can send a text, you can send an email, and basically say, hey, make sure that you pay. Reminder, rent is due on the first, late after the fifth, et cetera, et cetera. You just kind of do that in a sense. But um, when they do get behind, one of the first things I ask them is like, okay, what is the issues? What is the troubles you getting behind? That sort of thing. They will give me every excuse. If you've been doing this for a while, you're going to realize that they have every excuse. Okay. Somebody in the family died, true or not, I'm not sure. Okay. I don't look into depth in that issue, but other bills came up, the car broke down, et cetera, et cetera. The more you do this, the more tenants, the more rentals you have, the more you're going to hear that. That just comes with it. I'll go ahead and give you all that. Okay. Now there's some very, very good renters. I have some for years. Every month they pay on time. Every month they pay early. Okay. So you have the good ones, and then you have those that tend to linger around and they don't. So those are the ones we're talking about at this time. But when that happens, tell me why you have not paid on time this month. Okay. Oh, and I skipped the section. My apologies. So what I was going to say is add an additional fees per day. So if the city, the state, wherever you are, if they allow, what you can do is, okay, rent is due on the first, late after the fifth, on the sixth, you get hit with that fee. Now, on the seventh, you can start adding a $5, $10. I've seen more than that per day, meaning that every day that they're late after the sixth, because the late fee already hit once. And what happens is that adds that pressure to you better pay now, per se. So come the 15th, they don't rack $5 per day, for instance, and that's that additional that they're doing it. And you're not doing it to be ugly mean about it. It's more so again just to kind of hold them accountable. Because what I was going to say is, if I'm already late on the sixth and it's going to be $70, that 10% out of 700, why don't I just wait till the 15th and pay it? It's not really going to matter at this point. So they just linger to extra days, extra weeks, and then here it is, the 15th. And finally they decide to give you your payment and your late fee. So to avoid that, you can't put a everyday charge of whatever it is that your city, your county allows it to. Okay. Good evening. A few more people are joining us on Instagram. So we are going on evictions at this point. Everybody loves talking about evictions, right? Nobody likes talking about evictions. I'll tell you what, I've been to court many times, many more times than I like to talk about, but that's part of the territory. That's part of the business. That's the way it comes sometimes. And I've yet to meet any landlord, any investor that was there that said they were excited. It's just not something you get excited about. I mean, it's the last kind of resort of this, what you got to turn to. And when you're taking in tenants and you're trying to rent for people, you don't think about how many court visits am I going to do this year? That doesn't come with it. But unfortunately, that happens, and the excuses are there. So you're going to hear every one of them. The one thing I suggest to all you investors, and again, it's not to be ugly, it's not to be mean, but you're going to have to toughen up a little bit in the sense. Okay. Ask yourself this: what would be expected and what would be allowed of me if I rented from somebody? Will they allow me to just be late every other month? Hey, my car bill was high. Hey, my electricity this. Hey, this and that. Would they be okay? Okay, don't worry about it. Pay it when you can. That would not happen. So don't allow that in the sense. And the problem with a lot of investors is they're a little too easy with something like that. And what you're really doing is setting them up for failure. If you allow the first payment to be late, what do you think is going to happen on the second and on the third one, and then so forth? And now there's expectation because now they're thinking, well, you work with me on first. Now, hey, I'm really behind this time, meaning you weren't. really behind the previous time maybe, but they just expect every month, just help me out. And I tend to say, hey, help me out this month if you can. Just hey, where I had one 2 months ago, trying to negotiate the late fee. Hey, I'll pay X amount right now, and I'll give the rest in a couple of days if you can waive the late fee. This is not a negotiation. There's an agreement in paper and writing in place for that reason. This is what is due. If you don't pay on the set date, it is late as it is. So there's no negotiation there, and don't give into that. If a tenant is late every month and they start getting further, okay, then what's going to happen at that point is that they're going to end up being evicted sooner or later. Okay. All right. Let's see. Any questions so far? Do you self-manage? Wonderful question. Yes, I do. I do to a certain amount, and that's actually something we're going to be announcing pretty soon. But always manage all your properties as long as you can handle. Some of you investors are starting with one, maybe two units. You should be able to handle that. I mean, one or two. Now, get some help, get some coaching, some guidance if you can. But when you're getting up there in the 10, maybe 11 units, if that's a little too much, I would say property management. They have them everywhere, and we're going to do something big on that as well. So, but all right. So the tenants behind, they can't pay because every issue's happening. Life isn't going so well. I heard it. I'm truly sorry, but we need a set date. We need a date when you're going to pay. So they give me a date and they don't meet that date. At that point, what do you do then? When you start talking about evictions, people get into the scare mentality of obviously nobody wants to be evicted. Nobody wants their credit ruined because we do report to all three credit bureaus, but it's more of a limited scare, if you will. They get a little scared the first time you say it to them, and it kind of adds pressure too. I better make my payment. And they do. They make their payment. But then another month happens again. And then you mention eviction again. Not so really concerned with what, with that again. And then it happens again. So it starts getting easier for them to be later and later. And at one point, and again, another gray area, in certain states, like for instance, where we're located, we don't have to keep accepting late payments. And that can actually be on the law, on the rental lease. We will not accept late payments after the third consecutive or fourth or whatever it is that you want to write on there. And even if it's not in writing, I mean, you don't have to continue to accept the late payments because remember, every month that and we do month to month, by the way, but even if you do leases, every month that they are late, they are breaching the contract assets. Okay, so they're constantly backing up, and they're having to chase them, having to spend time, having to go after them. Okay, and then it doesn't get easy. I'll say that. And I'm really thinking right now, I want to talk to the rental notes, the financing, because that's where we struggle a little bit. And the reason we did is because every year, at the beginning of the year, especially, you start seeing all these laws, all these rules, they start changing up a little bit. And it's all how you file, it's all the documents. So where it's really becoming real linked is going to be the rent to owns and notes. But here's what we do with people that are late behind. Okay. We understand that times are hard. Okay. You can't make the payment on time. Here's what we can do. We can put you on a payment plan. That's option number one. Or we can get you to move out, maybe find something a little more affordable. Okay. Something you can afford and maybe you can make those payments on time. If we do, here's what we can do for you. Some of you may have heard this, and this is a term that they use a lot on real estate. It's money for keys per se. And what you're doing is basically, I will pay you X amount to move out, which is going to help you to put a deposit or whatever you need to do at the new property, and you're going to hand us the keys. Okay. What you're really doing is asking them to turn your property in good condition because that's going to be part of that. If you can clean up the home, if you can turn it in a presentable to the best of your ability condition and hand us the keys, we'll give you an extra couple of weeks and we'll give you $400 or $500, whatever it may be. That's the number between you and them. Okay. It's usually not much greater than that. But again, this is to help them go somewhere else. But at the same time, it avoids the court costs. It avoids going to court. It avoids attention. And, a lot of these mobile homes that we sell, they're all fixer-uppers. They're all handyman specialists. How do you think they got in that condition? How do you think a mobile home that was in good condition, move-in ready, suddenly became a fixer-upper? By evicting the tenant. Tenants leave and they're angry, even though it's their fault. They're the ones that got behind, but they tend to tear stuff on their way out, right? So when they do, now you have a lot more issues to deal with. And I mean, I can tell you stories. I'm not going to mention them on because I don't want to give anybody ideas. But we've seen some very malicious acts happen. It's clearly they were angry, upset that they were being evicted, and they didn't want to go. So that was their thank you to you, per se. Okay. Any questions, drop them on in the comments. But all right, so they don't agree to give you the keys. They say, absolutely not. You're going to have to evict me. Or what typically happens is they don't answer the phone, they don't respond to emails or text. That's number one key that they're not going to work with you. So we tried, we go knock on the door, but nothing is happening. So now it is time to, yes, it's going to have to go through court. When it does happen in court, here is how it's going to happen. Again, I repeat myself, check your city, county, state, make sure it is the same way. And a lot of the things are very similar, but they may be called different. So I will say that, up in New York, I know even the forms, the documents that we can submit, they're called something different, but it's the same thing. You're evicting somebody, you're taking ownership of the property again. It's all you're trying to do. So just, find out, do the research and what it is that how you need to file for those things so that you're doing it accordingly. And if you are not sure, ask a court clerk or visit an attorney. That's always a smart, wise thing to do. You can submit through internet. And during COVID, that's kind of the only way you could submit. And even though you really couldn't evict anybody, but you can do it online still. You obviously pay through the system, or you can go in person. What you're going to have to do and the documents you're going to have. Again, you are going to court. So you're going to want to have everything together. Anything that you're missing, anything that you're wrong, the judge can throw it out. And I've been in courts where I'm sitting waiting for my turn, waiting, and I'm just hearing the cases go before me. And some of the people that have lost the case in a sense, the landlords, is because they failed to bring a certain document. They failed to document something accordingly, or something was wrong. If your numbers are off, that's not a good place for you to be. Not when you're in court. Okay, we'll talk a little bit more on that. But you file for this here. And what's going to happen is when you do file, you're going to have to pay. Make sure that you file exactly to the penny as to what they owe you at that time. If it's, for instance, the 4th and they're already going to be late again tomorrow, you can't put that on there. Okay. It's only the day you submit up to that point. That's what you're going to put. But make sure that you also add the fee that it's costing you to do it. I think here in Central Georgia, we do about 150 for, one of these, 120, whatever it is. You want to add that also as part of your charging them for that. And what's going to happen is, they got options when they get this paper. They still can get out of that eviction. What they can do is they can catch you up, pay you everything, including the fee that it took you to file for an eviction, and then they go back in good standing, if you will, for that time being. But if not, then that's what they're going to get hit with an eviction. When you follow that, an officer will go out to the property, the mobile home, they'll knock on the door and hand them an eviction, basically a court letter, a court notice. And it says hey, appear on this certain date. This is the reason why, and it is going to have your statement on there. At the point, what the resident can do, and typically does do, is nothing. They don't do anything. They will take the letter and just kind of roll with it. What happens is that letter gives them an additional X amount of time to when the court date is going to be. That could be next week. It could be in a couple of weeks, or here lately, unfortunately, it could be in a month or later. So they have that amount of time to continue to live there. Because at this point, if you've taken it from communicating with them, that you're trying to work with them, and now they did not communicate with you, but you filed on them, you don't need to have communication with them anymore. At that point, there's really anything that needs to be done needs to go to the court or involve your attorney, and then they can decipher on that. But anytime we ever took it to the point where we filed for eviction, that's the end of the conversation. Any other conversation is going to happen in the courtroom, because you don't want no he said, she said kind of thing, and you get into problems trying to negotiate outside of that. So don't do that. But when you do go to court, if they don't show up, then what's going to happen is, and again, don't visit the home, don't communicate with them, but you now you submit what is called a writ, which is now what's going to take an officer to go out there and post another letter to them and say you got 2 days, 3 days, whatever your county city says to be out, or basically they come knock on the door and put you out. You still have to wait for that time lapse to when that date comes, and then at that point you can go out there with an officer. Typically you have to have a crew to help move all the stuff out of the home if there's anything there. I wish there was almost a point where we can go knock once the eviction happens, but the writ has not to say if you're not here, there's no need for a writ. But you got to follow the process. The rules, regulations are there. You do not want to get yourself in trouble. So once that writ happens, we go and knock on the door with the officer. If nobody's there and they're gone, then that's really the end of that. Okay. If they are there, then they're going to be basically tossed out. The officer sits there and tells them, hey, you got 20 minutes to get out, 10 minutes to get out, whatever it may be. And then you have to go in as your team and get their belongings and put them out by the curb. You cannot take ownership of their belongings. Okay. So that's how that one works. Now, if they do show up to court, We've had those as well. They show up to court and they are ready to go in front of a judge. So, okay, so it's showtime in a sense. All right, so you go in front of a judge, and again, all your documents, everything that you have as history on there, any text, any emails, I would print those out and have them with me. You're gonna stand in front of the judge, and it's pretty cut dry. Are you behind on rent this month on this amount that obviously the landlord is stating? Here is the number one reason I've heard that the residents say, the tenants say, I have not paid because the house is in terrible condition, or this doesn't work, that doesn't work. I've asked him to change this, I've asked him to, et cetera, et cetera. So the reason behind why they have not paid and or communicated with you for that reason is because something is broken in the home. So they feel they shouldn't have to pay you for rental that month. And unfortunately, that's not how it works. Okay. If there is an issue with the home, what the resident can do, and I've seen this also, some investors, y'all don't do very well at keeping up with the homes. And what happens is they start tearing up more, tearing up more. That tenant can actually go to the court and file their own paperwork against you. That they still have to keep paying rent on time, but they can actually file against you to say, hey, this house is unsafe or unlivable or whatever it is, if they're constantly going to you to fix something and you don't. But you cannot wait until the court date to be in front of a judge and say, hey, this doesn't work. So I didn't pay rent this time. Not going to work. I've heard a judge one time say, well, if it's in such bad condition, why are you still living there? That was a good one. And they were. So it must have not been so bad. That was not one of mine. That was the previous case going on. But they will show the documents, and if they are obviously they are behind, they have no proof that they're showing you that they paid. Then at that point, the judge typically asks you as a landlord, how many days do you give them to move out? That's basically the writ at that point. 3 days, 5 days, whatever you want to give them. I mean, there is a limit as to what you have to give them, but you don't have to work with them at that point. Okay, so that's kind of how that one works at that point. They'll do the writ, and then the same process again. They have that amount of days to get out. And if they don't, you will show up with an officer and your team. And if they're not out, it's time to go. And we've seen that. It's unfortunate. We've only seen a couple where it was a writ and they didn't think it was serious for whatever reason. They were living life like it was just another day. Came in and basically tossed them out. I mean, it was time to go. So that was unfortunate. But at the end of the day, we're not here to be the bad guys. If anything, being investors in mobile homes, we are providing affordability housing. So we're giving back. If a individual, if a tenant, whatever it may be, is they're not paying on time, then that's on them. They've obviously missed their chances of taking your responsibility, and it is what it is. It's a business at the end of the day. So remove them and put somebody else that is in need of a home but can actually pay on time. 30 minutes up. There is not enough time. I'm thinking about moving this cost to maybe 45 minutes. Y'all tell me what y'all think. Send me an email. But again, on Wednesday, here's what we're going to cover on Wednesday evening at 7 p.m. We'll cover a little bit about the same landlord and evictions. But don't forget that aside from the landlord, you're the landlord and you're trying to evict somebody because they haven't paid. That's most common. But what happens when you're investing in a mobile home park and the mobile home park manager is trying to evict you? They're trying to evict you for whatever reason, rules, regulations, or they just don't want to renew your agreement and you don't really live there. You only have investments. You have mobile homes there that you are selling on notes, on rentals, whatever it may be. Now what? That's a problem. That's a huge problem. And we've seen this, a couple of investors have come to me. We were able to resolve their problems, but that's not a good position to be. What about if the tenants were the residents? So you have a couple mobile homes in a park, and one of them is a rental, one of them is a rent to own. It doesn't matter, but both of them fail to abide by the rule and regulations. So now the park manager comes to you and says, I am tossing your residents out. They're going to be evicted as of next week. We're going to post a letter on their door. Only the issue with that is that those residents are rented from you, one of them, which that's fine, the rule regulations about also, but then the other one is buying a home from you. Does that mean now they get to move the mobile home out, or what happens in that sense? Those are issues that you will run into. And one of the things is you have to have a good relationships with the park owners and park managers, but that's irrelevant. When it comes down to this is how do you problem solve this? So that's huge. We'll definitely cover that on Wednesday. Let me see a couple questions if there's any. All right, I don't see anything on. Let's see on Zoom. Any questions? Y'all drop a question on here. I'd love to answer a couple more. I got the do you self-manage? Yes, I do. So All right, so let me give a couple announcements because we got some pretty awesome stuff coming up as well. So let's see. Level Up. The Level Up is an awesome event. That's a live in person. I like a little more 3D versus Zoom. Zoom is cool, but 3D where we're actually live in person. The next one is going to be at Northport, Florida. The previous one we had was actually in Naples. Phenomenal event. A lot of people attended from all over. People flew from states. You know, the Level Up is not just another RIA meetup. Okay, it's not just let's connect, let's give a few cards out, handshakes, and maybe everybody goes home. Nobody thinks of nobody. Kind of ends right there. That is not what we want. We want a small group of people that add value, that are serious about investing and coming to also learn. Because that's what I do at the event is I also coach topics on mobile home investing. So we're not there to just meet, connect. That's beautiful. That's great. Build the relationships, build the network so that your network can also grow. But I want to teach y'all topics. And I'll take a pretty good amount of time to answer everybody's questions. Q&A time. What are you dealing with? What are you investing on? Let me help you on this. Let me structure this deal for you. Whatever it may be that you're working on, definitely bring it on that. If you have not signed up on that, visit GarciaMHU.com. Send us an email. I'll put the website on here in the email. Let me make sure I put it on Zoom as well. Because if you are interested on that, you're going to want to RSVP. That's going to be on September the 9th, which is Friday coming up next week. That's going to be from 11 in the morning to about 2:30 in the afternoon. So early one. That evening, we have a power meet. Me, my team, and our crew is going to be there. We're going to be talking about deals, investments, other coachings coming up, other events. Any of you that want to come and just join with us and kind of network with us, then that's going to be a great opportunity as well. Then let me see, September 24th. I've been asked this for many, many months. When are you going to have a walkthrough in a mobile home park? You know, that's what we do at the Shadow. The Shadow event is a 2-day event that happens October 1st to October 2nd. That is our second one of the year and the last one of this year. That's where we take you out and we show you step by step from step one to the end, how to get leads, how to talk to sellers, how to evaluate a mobile home. What is a mobile home valued as is? What does it cost? You know, all these things that you need to know before you invest. So we take you on that and take you on that 2-day event. We'll have speakers, we'll have coaches, we'll have mobile home park owners, park managers. Everybody's at the 2-day event. But the week before September 24th, we do have an investor who actually attended one of our previous shadows. I want to say a little over 2 years ago, if I remember correctly. He is doing phenomenal. He is investing on land packages, which is mobile homes and land. That's a great way to add value and convert to real estate. So many things we can coach you, but we're going to be connecting with him and we will be doing a walkthrough in Atlanta. So stay tuned for that. September 24th. This is the first time announcing on it. We're still putting things together. We'll let you know the location. We'll let you know the time. But it's obviously going to be September 24th, that Saturday. So you do not want to miss that. That is a week before the shadow event. Okay. And then Tuesdays, our spreadsheet is loaded with awesome investments. You know, a bunch of deals. So Central Georgia. Central Georgia is a hot market, hot area. Warner Robins, Byron, Perry, Macon, all those areas are booming and growing. So what happens is that many more people need affordability housing. And that's what mobile homes are. If you don't have access to our spreadsheet is our full inventory sheet that you can spend hours looking at it if you like, studying. Some of you are new to mobile home investing and trying to find a beat up mobile home to study on. Have all day to do it. You have that access to it. So just send us an email and we can get you that sheet. Okay. So that's what we got going on. But definitely join me on Wednesday. Join me on Tuesday for deals, and we'll cover more topics on this evictions. I hope this was productive. If you do like it, be sure to hit the like, subscribe on our YouTube also, where the replay will be available. All right. So Instagram, I'm letting you go at this time. Thank you. Thank you for joining us. Zoom, likewise. Have a great evening and thank you for watching.